Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into an absolutely incredible piece of history today. We're talking about a true Perjuangan heroic, a heroic struggle that honestly sounds like something straight out of a movie. We're looking at the story of Martha Christina Tiahahu. She is one of Indonesia's absolute youngest national heroines. And the sheer scale of her bravery? It's literally hard to wrap your head around when you dive into the historical records. So, we're going to break down exactly how her extraordinary anti-colonial defiance actually unfolded. But before we get deep into the battlefield tactics and the historical timelines, I want you to genuinely ask yourself something. What would you risk at 17 years old? Seriously, think back to when you were 17. What were your biggest worries? What took up your day-to-day life? For most of us, right, those teenage years are all about figuring out who we are, maybe stressing over school, or just kind of planning for this vague, uncertain future. But as you'll see in the source material today, for the young woman we're focusing on, 17 meant literally staring down the barrel of a heavily armed colonial military empire. Yep, just 17. At that exact age, Martha Christina Tiahahu didn't just casually protest. She literally took up arms. She marched directly into the absolute chaos of the Pattimura rebellion of 1817, standing toe-to-toe with heavily armed Dutch colonial forces. It's this exact intersection, this mix of extreme youth and just unimaginable courage that transforms her story from a simple footnote in a history book into an enduring, powerful symbol of resistance. But how does a teenager even end up on the front lines of a brutal colonial war in the first place? Well, that brings us to Section 1, the making of a warrior, raised for resistance. Okay, let's dive into this fascinating environment she grew up in. Martha was born into a world of intense consequence. This was the village of Santiago de Abubu on Nusalaut Island back in the year 1800. Right from the start, she was completely immersed in local leadership meetings, serious political discussions, and heavy military matters, all while developing this fierce independent spirit and incredible physical agility. Now, her mother, Sina, tragically passed away when Martha was just a baby. Because of that, she was raised entirely by her father, Captain Paulus Tiahahu, who was a really prominent military leader of the Soa Uluputi clan. She shadowed him absolutely everywhere. So she wasn't shielded from the harsh realities of her world. She was educated by them. She totally absorbed the political climate. She completely understood the anti-colonial sentiment that was brewing across the Maluku archipelago, and she physically trained to survive in it. She was, quite literally, raised to resist. Which leads us to Section 2, the front lines of 1817, the Maluku War. So, picture this. It's May 1817, and Capitan Pattimura launches an armed uprising. Martha's father rallies their people to join the alliance, and Martha? She doesn't stay behind. No way. She marches right up to the front lines. She fought directly in critical, heavy engagements across Saparua and Nusalaut Islands. She wasn't just hanging back in the shadows. She was deeply embedded in active combat. We're talking about fierce battles, including one that actually resulted in the death of the Dutch commander Richmond and heavily wounded his successor, Commander Meyer. By stepping up like this, she openly and totally defied the gender roles of her era. And honestly, perhaps the biggest impact? Her presence served as a massive morale booster. I mean, seeing a 17-year-old girl risking her life right alongside hardened warriors, that proved to the Moluccan forces that their struggle demanded absolutely everyone's dedication, no matter their age or gender. And this brilliantly illustrates her tactical mind in the heat of battle. Imagine the scene at Fort Durastade. The Moluccan fighters' ammunition runs dangerously low. It's a desperate situation. But Martha steps right into that leadership vacuum. First, she organizes the combatants. Second, she rallies the troops, actively keeping panic at bay. Third, when the bullets were literally all gone, she directs her forces to hurl heavy stones at the advancing Dutch soldiers. Just incredible resourcefulness. And fourth, contemporary accounts actually describe her carrying a spear, fearlessly directing soldiers right there on the battlefield. She wasn't just a symbol to boost morale. She was a highly capable, resourceful tactical operator working under immense pressure. Now we enter Section 3, Unyielding Defiance Unto Death, the tragic timeline. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the events that follow are just absolutely devastating. By late 1817, the Dutch launched a massive, heavy offensive under Colonel Vermeulen Kringer. In October of that year, Martha and her father were captured, alongside Capitan Pattimura. Interestingly enough, Martha was initially released by the authorities, pretty much solely because of her youth. But then we hit November 17th. Her father, Captain Paulus Tiahahu, was executed by a firing squad at Fort Beverwyck, and Martha was forced to witness this. It's heartbreaking. Yet, Instead of breaking her spirit, it completely galvanized her. By December, she was recaptured. Why? Because she had immediately gone right back to the hills to wage guerrilla warfare against Dutch patrols. She simply refused to stop fighting, which ultimately brings us to January 2, 1818, and her tragic death at sea.
So, the crucial point is how she retained her agency until the very, very end. After she was recaptured, Martha was placed aboard a Dutch ship, the HMS Evertsen. She was destined for Java, where she was going to be forced into hard labor on coffee plantations. She fell severely ill during the voyage, but as a final, absolute act of terminal protest, she strictly refused all food, water, and medicine offered by the Dutch physicians. She literally would not let her captors dictate her survival. She passed away on January 2, 1818, while crossing the Banda Sea. She was buried at sea that very same day. She was just 2 days shy of her 18th birthday.
Finally, Section 4, an enduring national legacy, connecting the past to the present. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how comprehensively her legacy has been woven into the actual fabric of modern Indonesia. I mean, even the Dutch officials who captured her recorded her incredible defiance in their official ship logs and memoirs. Her bravery was just undeniable to everyone who witnessed it. Posthumously, she was officially designated a National Heroine of Indonesia, and every single year on the anniversary of her death, January 2nd, the nation observes Martha Christina Tiahahu Day. The ceremonies are incredibly moving. Citizens gather on the water and scatter flower petals right into the Banda Sea, in the exact area where she was laid to rest. Visually, she is memorialized by a towering 8-meter bronze statue in Ambon, where she's depicted holding her signature spear, looking out over that very same sea. And her name literally sails on today, proudly carried by the Indonesian naval frigate, the KRI Martha Christina Tiahahu. Not to mention, she's the namesake of public thoroughfares and beautiful literacy parks in Jakarta.
Which brings us to a final question I really want to leave you with. How do we honor such unyielding defiance today? We've just traced the deeply moving narrative of a young woman who was raised for resistance, who fought fiercely on the front lines, suffered unimaginable loss, and yet never once compromised her principles, even at the cost of her own life. At just 17 years old, her perjuangan heroic, this unbelievable heroic struggle, is a stark, powerful reminder of the energy of youth, the absolute weight of conviction, and the true price of freedom. As you close out of this explainer today, I really hope you take a moment to reflect on Martha Christina Tiahahu's legacy. Consider how her fierce, unyielding spirit might just inspire the courage we all need to face the challenges in our own lives.